Good. Hello, everybody. This is the second live session of our massive open online course on feeding a hungry planet. And it's related to the second week, the second module in this course. And in this module, we talk about the history of agriculture. We talk about the future in a sense that there are lots of risks with a business as usual scenario in terms of just continuing what we eat and how we produce it. And that these business as usual scenarios don't quite work because we can't meet food security as well as environmental and other goals in the same approach with that kind of old-fashioned approach. And we talk about the fact that agriculture sits really at the middle of sustainable development and therefore also the achievement of the new sustainable development goals. So one thing that is particularly important for that is that we find practical solutions, things that can really lead to significant improvement at a larger scale in farming worldwide. And that particularly also relates to the question of hundreds of millions of smallholder farmers that still are the backbone of food production in many low and also some middle income countries. So my name is Achim Dobermann. I'm the coordinator of the course. I'm the director of Rosmstead Research here in the UK. And I've worked myself for nearly 30 years now in science, but also the translation of science and the exchange of knowledge on these types of questions in many parts of the world. And I have to say personally that I'm not happy with what we have achieved. We have a lot of scientific knowledge, new technologies, many types of things that in theory could make a big difference in the productivity of smallholder farmers or even the quality of food that they produce, the income, and therefore also their livelihoods. But bringing all this to them and making sure that nobody is left behind has been quite a difficulty for many of us working in this field. And so this therefore raises the question, do we need some new approaches for this, some new concepts that also combine sort of social interactions with modern technology? And that's what I think is what we want to discuss today. So my guest today is Njoki Thuo, and she is the product manager of a social enterprise called WeForm, and we'll talk about this later a little bit. So, but first of all, I want to welcome Njoki, and I want to start out by asking her a few personal questions in terms of about her background. So where in Kenya did you grow up, and how did you become what you currently are?
Thank you so much, Achim, for the warm welcome. Once again, my name is Njoki Thuo, and I grew up in Kenya on the foothold of Mount Kenya, which is basically an agricultural region, and we practice very much almost everything that's involved in agriculture. There's so many value chains there. My parents themselves grew up in families which were agricultural based. My grandparents were coffee farmers, both maternal and paternal, and unfortunately my parents didn't take up agriculture. They worked in white-collar jobs, but my interaction with my grandparents whenever I went to visit them was so very interesting, and I was fascinated by the fact that they can contribute towards feeding the village or feeding the locality around them. And I was very much intrigued, especially by coffee and tea, but favored coffee a lot. And I grew up visiting their farms, seeing what they were doing, asking so many questions, and of course being taught on how to practice agriculture according to our culture, especially so by my grandmother. That's highly influenced the career choice that I chose, because throughout my education in both primary school, high school, I was very passionate about agriculture as a subject and as a practice. I would keep rare rabbits, these small livestock that culturally are supposed to be kept by children. So I was allowed to keep such small livestock in our home, and also practice what I learned in class with what I was doing back at home, and went on to study agriculture to university level. And that's how I found myself as a product manager for WeForm, because WeForm is an ag-tech company that's working with farmers, and there must be a voice or something, a voice bringing agricultural information.
So we'll come back to that in a minute. So but by heart you're essentially, if I get this right, an agronomist.
Yes.
So
A trained agronomist, yes.
Yeah, so really then can also have, advise people on good practices in the field.
Yes.
Now let's come back to WeForm a little bit. So what is WeForm? What is the one major problem that you're trying to tackle?
Okay, so WeForm is an agricultural company that's connecting farmers to vital farming information. And the why behind us creating WeForm is in different sub-Saharan countries, we noticed that the farmer to extension officer or extension advisor or worker ratio is very high. You'd find in some places, for instance, in a county in Kenya that I visited, I and went to the Ministry of Agriculture. On their wall, they had an estimate of how many extension officers versus the farmers that are in the county, and it was 1 to 900, sorry, which is a very high ratio because one person cannot meet the needs of 900 farmers based on geography of that area. And then again, the extension officers sometimes are limited with the resources that they need to reach out to these farmers. So with that gap, and with farmers still practicing old agricultural practices, there's a need to bridge that gap and ensure that the vital information is reaching to farmers. So WeForm was created to meet this need, and we meet the need of information via mobile phones. The choice for mobile phones was again chosen because in Kenya there's around 70% mobile penetration, and using the fact that each homestead must have a mobile phone for money transfer, which is very famous here in Kenya. So that's the guidance as to why we chose to go through mobile phones. And again, based on the mobile money transfer that's available here in Kenya, farmers again are very familiar with mobile messages or short message services. So our service is available via SMS, and farmers, what they only have to do is to subscribe to the short code for WeForm in a particular country. Once they're subscribed, they get instructions on how to ask their daily farming questions, and they'll be receiving answers. And also, they will be able to help out other farmers near them or even in the country, since it's a peer-to-peer platform.
So how does it actually work? Explain this in simple terms. So what is it that WeForm does? How does the whole thing works from farmer to farmer?
Okay, it's actually very simple. I'm going to use the example of Kenya. We have a short code number, which is 22301. So as a farmer, what I'll do, I'll just send the word join, or in whatever language I favor to use, I'll send the word join to that short code number. It's free for use, so the farmer won't be charged to use the service. After I send the word join, I'll receive a message telling me welcome to WeForm, and receive instructions on how to use WeForm. I'll be shown how to ask a question, which is very easy. You just start your question with the letter Q as a code for question. And then after the letter Q, follow up with the contents of your question. Then to respond to a question, when it comes into your phone, it will have a code, again similar to Q, but now with a number showing this is question number 21, for example. And to respond to question number 21, just start with Q21. So it's very easy for farmers to use. We use codes because, again, the mobile money that farmers have highly interacted with also uses codes as identifier for different messages.
So as a farmer, I don't need to have a fancy, expensive smartphone to use this, right?
No, you don't. Any phone that has ability to send and receive messages can utilize WeForm at no cost for the farmer.
It's fascinating to watch. I'm watching the live feed on your website as we speak. You know, there are, according to your website, 1.4 million farmers registered in WeForm.
Yes.
So far, something like 3 million questions have been asked and 7.1 million answers have been given. And when you watch the live feed, you're like every second a question pops up. You know, somebody wants to know how to treat mastitis. Somebody wants to know what plants can be grown near a beehive. Leads advice on the right spacing for beans. When to plow before the rain comes. It's all kind of very specific, interesting questions. Do you feel that people the answers are given then by other farmers, I suppose, mostly that are helpful, or is it, or how do people make then use of the answers also?
Okay, so one, we have a way of filtering out extremely bad content. For example, we build WeForm for use for agricultural purposes only. And since it's free, many people might end up talking about other non-agricultural related content. For example, let me just use the football example. Whenever there are big matches, you might find people asking about predictions for a match on the system. So that's one way of ensuring we strictly remain agricultural. Such content purely won't go through our system. We have algorithms to block them out. Then for farmers to respond to the next level, which is agricultural questions going through the system, we have an algorithm that ensures that we understand our users and we know person X has the ability or has shown over the past 1 month or over the past 2 weeks or 1 year that he can respond to questions about beans. So he's the person who's going to get questions about beans. And if he's indicating or asking more questions about beans, then it means this person is not good to ask questions about beans. So what that algorithm does, it categorizes our users into value chains, and you may find one user has different value chains. The logic behind this is the peer-to-peer system where we are utilizing the knowledge that farmers have built up over time, because we say the person who's best placed to help you with a problem is the person who's gone through that problem. If you want to go through a certain path, go with someone who's gone through that path 10 times, 5 times over and over. So that's the...
No, that's very, very clever, I think. So essentially, it's a very easy way to share knowledge beyond your local borders or even boundaries of a country. So farmers, from my experience too, when I travel to any country in the world, you will find some, just about every farmer knows something, you know, and of course some do a bit more than others, and some have much more longer farming experience also than others. So, but what I also often feel is that they have an embedded kind of knowledge that is also often quite different from what scientists or other kind of agricultural professionals have. And so capturing that knowledge in combination with maybe what modern science can do is to me very essential. So it's a very interesting platform that you have created for this purpose. Do you charge farmers for this?
No, we don't. It's purely free for the farmers to ask, to join, to receive answers, and also receive farming tips. Is purely free for farmers, no matter where they are.
Do you can you sort of cite maybe 1 or 2 examples for like farmers who have benefited greatly from this and have become like better entrepreneurs or any kind of evidence that this has made a difference?
Yes, I'm going to use a farmer who I actually visited when I was doing a short impact study or case study. And this farmer is called Cleopas. He's in the Rift Valley section of or region of Kenya, in a county called Nandi. And he was originally using WeForm for unintended purposes, something that we didn't create WeForm for. He was using WeForm to look for people with produce, would go get it from their farms and buy it at farm gate prices, then transport it to a bigger town and sell at a higher cost. Then he would get his markup, and that was a way of him earning money on top of what he was producing in his farm. So we discovered what he was using WeFarm for, and started following him up on his habit or different behavior on the system. And over time, we discovered that after he stopped buying produce from fellow farmers, and we were interested to understand the reason as to why he was doing that. And the feedback he gave was, I was now able to raise enough capital to venture into an agricultural enterprise that I was highly interested in. And he started a fruit orchard. He has different fruits in his area, and he's actually the champion for that area because he has gone up to a point where he's producing seedlings and selling to other farmers. And the other thing that is interesting is there was cross enterprise interaction, because the moment he discovered I can sell seedlings, and he was getting them very, very far away. He discovered that he can also sell seedlings for the cash crop of the area, and which is tea, and was able to learn about purple tea, which is a fairly new tea crop here in Kenya, which is much, much better than green tea. And he is now supplying both tree seedlings and purple tea seedlings to his, to farmers around him. And the beauty about it is he's in a very remote place, which one, the public transport does not actually get to his specific, I would say, local center. When I went there, I had to use public means up to the major town, then use other forms of transport like motorcycles, which is not very, very public, to go to actually reach him. And even you could see that at some point the tarmac road ended way before you get to his farm. So the beauty about this shows how WeFarm was able to connect this farmer who's in a very remote place and empower him to be able to supply seedlings and bring about a new value chain that's purple tea in his locality.
So you have been in operation for nearly 4 years, and if I understand right, mainly in Kenya and also Uganda. What have been some things that didn't quite work as you had hoped for? Some lessons learned, maybe things of any kind.
Okay. To point out that we also recently launched in Tanzania, and I would say one of the major challenges for WeFarm was introduction to new markets. For example, going to new countries, sometimes the legal framework or the government framework around there doesn't support introduction of this ag tech or these technologies for farmers. Then the other big challenge that we've had to overcome, and we are getting there, is actually getting farmers buying into this technology, because people tend to question things that are free. And so people would be like, are you sure you're going to help me? And it's free. So much doubt. But along the way, we've learned how to overcome some of these challenges.
So would this also imply that in the future you may have to change your business model in the sense that you become less dependent on donations or other types of philanthropic or public funding?
Yes, it's actually being piloted now. We're piloting and checking ways in which WeForm can be sustainable in the future, and we have an entire commercial department which is supporting our business model.
In terms of the product offering, so since you're a product manager, so what would be some sort of new things you would want to offer if you could?
If I could mention just a few, right now we are considering creating a product which farmers can be able to purchase quality, affordable agricultural inputs via WeForm, via the free SMS, and we are going to create a revenue model around that. This is going to be done with partnerships from various institutions like private businesses, governments, local governments, research institutes, and all that. And then the other product that we are hoping to create for farmers would be a marketplace for them to sell their farm produce. Because again, farmers will be asking after you take me through the good agricultural practices for this crop, and I'll have harvested, where will I now sell? And they will, since we've told them you can ask any question about agriculture on WeForm, you'll find such kind of questions on the platform. And you also find people asking, I'm looking for a buyer for my 10 chickens. Where can I sell them? Or here is my mobile phone number. So those are the two products that we are looking to create for farmers in the future.
So I'm a soil scientist and agronomist myself. So that has been my passion all my life. So do you feel that you have enough help and participation from the scientific community in what you're doing, or how could people like us participate more or even learn from that?
Okay, thank you so much for that question. Yeah, we do partner with research institutes. However, some of the partnerships really don't last that long because of different challenges that come along with the partnership. But we are very much open to partnering with institutes that providing farming research information that is essential for the farmer. To partner with such organizations, I think we require to have more institutes that are proactive. We do approach the institutes, but sometimes the bureaucracy in this institute takes forever.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Good.
being a startup, if it doesn't take time, then we have to concentrate on something else, because again we are short of human power. We have to be very smart in what we prioritize, essentially.
Well, I
So
hope
if,
we can find a way to work more together in the future, because we're right now designing a new initiative on bringing better agronomy or agronomy practices to scale in Africa. So, and I think these approaches and as sort of a social network approach supported by communication technology are very important for this. Now we have questions coming in, so I will just take them off the top here. The first one is from Natalia Palacios, and she is asking, nice work by WeForm, congratulations. Do you collect all the information for future predictions or analysis?
Actually, we do. A very good example that I can give is the El Nino scenario that happened way back. We were able to warn farmers on actually educate them on how to go about in case there was floods, and the response rate there were very, very interesting, because we got around 7 times responses from farmers as to how to manage floods in their farm, preparedness against too much rain, and all that. Another scenario was the fall armyworm. We were able to educate farmers on the system as to how to avoid or how to control fall armyworm. That was quite an issue in Kenya and Uganda, and there are so many examples as to which we use the data that we've collected so far, do quick analysis, and share the feedback with our farmers and tell them we think for this situation, you better prepare or you better do X and Y and Z.
But it is essentially a fairly substantial crowdsourcing platform that could be utilized for many things from an information point of view. But of course, people are always a little bit worried about the privacy and sharing data and these types of things. So do you have a clear data policy on this already? How you deal with that?
Yes, we have a clear data policy based on the fact that our headquarters is in London and we have to follow GDPR, which was recently implemented. And we also, to answer part of Natalia's question, is we also provide these insights to businesses and governments and local governments, and also some research institutes are interested in understanding what's happening on the ground, because the communication or the content on our platform is real time. So you'll be seeing these farmers in a certain region are suffering from, or their livestock suffering from foot and mouth, which is a notifiable disease. So we need to communicate to that local government to take measures. So we do that, and most of these insights or reports is our current business model, which I forgot to mention earlier on. So it's one of the ways we are making money.
So another question, what was the reason for you to start in Kenya as opposed to other countries?
Oh, okay. The reason as to why we started in Kenya.
It's because you're Kenyan, right?
Yes, it's very interesting actually. And WeForm is actually a farmer startup, because farmers in, I don't know whether you know this, there was a charitable institution that was working with tea and coffee farmers. That charitable institution back then was called Cafe Direct. Producers Foundation, and that group of farmers are the ones who said we need a tool to be able to communicate to each other so that we can support our other enterprises, because already tea and coffee are very established value chains with their own extension networks and training modules already created. So they were interested in having a way to talk to each other, and they're the ones who did the first design of WeForm and all that. And after it was launched and became successful, it was opened up to other users and then launched to Uganda in 2015. That's the reason as to why we began in Kenya.
Yeah. One has to be pragmatic, I guess. So the next question is from Irina Margold. Oh no, that's still the. Yeah, no, that's actually that was a question from her already. But she's also asking, or perhaps why could this work better or worse in different countries?
Okay, why it would work better or worse in different countries is purely the environment in that country. And one of the greatest environments that influences how WeForm works better is the government and the legal environment. If we can go into a country and it requires us to take, the process for us to set up shop takes 6 months, then that is a bit hectic for us. We require a country framework that is easier to allow us to set up, and also the tech environment. Some countries sometimes do not have the technology capacity to support what we need. For example, maybe the mobile network operator is owned by the government, or majority of it is controlled by the government, and they're not interested with this, or they have their own other form of communicating to the farmers. Then this won't be enticing enough for them. So majorly what influences our success or failure in new countries would be the legal framework and the policies and the government.
Irina has another question. Do you generally have to iterate fast or slow? How long is the wait between introducing an improvement or a new feature and seeing benefits in the field?
Okay, we iterate as fast as the farmers give us feedback. For example, we've had to create products that are farmer friendly to help them understand what WeForm is and to have a way of celebrating our farmers. We have a product we call Champion Farmer, and that was iterated on. We took around actually 3 weeks. I would say maximum 1 month to see what farmers needed with that product, and we interacted. Oh, sorry, farmers interacted with that product for 1 year so that we can be able to iterate it again, because for agriculture you must have first of all wait and see whether farmers will give you feedback, and the feedback is dependent on the progress made by the crop or the animal. And some crops take 3 months, 6 months. So we actually have to follow the cropping calendars of different countries and regions.
But generally, you would probably try to always follow a lean approach to sort of move things fast, test, and if they work, they work, and they scale up. And if they don't work, you try something else,
Yes.
I guess.
Yes.
So Becky Tanui has a question. How do you monitor the information you give farmers in helping farmers?
Okay. So how we, I'll go back again to what I mentioned earlier on how we ensure that we have quality content getting to our farmers. And as I said, the first thing we have is a spam filter, because as it happens to any social network, there must be people using it for unintended purposes. So we filter it out. For example, people talking about football, politics, we do not allow that to go through our system. Then the next step to ensure that content that now has been filtered and is okay and is agricultural questions or content, we use an algorithm that enables us to, one, see this content is talking about, for example, beans. The algorithm will be able to identify that this is a question about beans. Once it identifies that, it has also categorized the 1.4 million farmers into value chains. And we understand that this person is a person who asks questions about beans. So if he's asking 90 out of 100 questions about beans, that means he probably needs information about beans. So we cannot send him questions about beans. So we will go to the person who's been responding the opposite of question of Mr. X. So if I've been sending 90 answers about beans out of 100, it means I have the information or I have the experience with beans. So this is the person we are going to send the question about beans. And on average, the performance of our algorithm is 70%. It's able to curate the content and see that this is the best person placed and this is a question about X, and be able to match. So we are.
I have no clue whether that's 70% is good or bad. It sounds quite impressive, but do you think it will even improve further?
Right now, we are currently working on making it even much better, because right now it works on keywords. So we want it to understand phrases rather than keywords. We are combining keywords for it to understand. So it will understand the code, and then a keyword, for example, we've taught it these are the value chains that are normally talked about on WeForm, and that's now actually happening. Even say, for example, a person wanted to understand what is the most talked about value chain on WeForm, that's the algorithm that's going to answer that question. So we are progressing and making it understand phrases, and hopefully in the future understand the whole context of the messages.
So I'm getting much more very interesting questions. So be prepared to answer a few more here. Another one from Irina. Running this service, do you see trends in agriculture in Kenya? Do you can you answer? Do answers lean a certain way? For example, the cheapest way to grow, a more environmentally friendly way to grow. Do you see trends in the answers or questions?
Yeah, definitely we do. And the trends that we observe is basically what the farmer knows. Well, excuse me. For example, farmers tend to respond with what works for them. And I can give an example with nutrition or plant nutrition. Most of the questions that farmers ask about how do I ensure that I have bigger sized tomato fruits will be responded to with answers like to get bigger tomato fruits you need to use decomposed chicken manure. They would actually even be specific to the thing that they use on their farm. So I would say it leans heavily on what the farmer is actually practicing on their farm. I've seen people talking about irrigation, and again, it's very specific to the drier parts of the country because, again, we categorize our users according to location. So if a person is, for example, in Turkana County, which is an Asal in Kenya, with a freshwater lake just nearby, they will tend to talk a lot about irrigation and water saving techniques, mulching, all such kind of content.
Great. A question from Anna Yi. Congrats for this initiative. 2 questions, actually. Does WeForm promote biodiversity awareness through its service? And the second question related to that, do farmers have concerns about adapting their crops for improving habitats and protecting biodiversity? Is that an issue that
for them, I would say unless a farmer is trained on biodiversity and adaptation of the crops and all that, they will then ask. But if they are not, they will not ask. So farmers will generate content based on what they know. However, we've seen people asking about what varieties to grow for what regions. And usually it's stemming from a fact that I tried variety X and last season and it did perform well. So I need to know which variety, for example, of maize do I grow in my region such that it's not attacked by fall armyworm, for example, or striga, which is prevalent in some regions of Kenya. So that's their own way of farmers asking about adaptation of their crops and biodiversity. Then when it comes to livestock, we now see explicit breeds to adapting different climate, climate, what is it? Sorry, it has escaped my mind. We will see farmers asking, I am in Nyanza County, we have, it's dry and there is a high tsetse infestation, which then cow breed for milk should I rear in this region? So that's their way of asking. In terms of biodiversity, unless the farmers are talking about them, right now we do not push messages and train farmers about biodiversity unless it's a specific partnership with an institute. For example, we partner with institutes to provide farmers with weather information on and how to prepare for certain seasons. So if we have a partnership with an institute that's concerned about biodiversity, then we will do push messages about biodiversity.
Good. A question from Hamdan Issa. Can farms in Ghana link up well with WeForm in terms of agricultural entrepreneurship or in terms of information, specifically to the Ghanaian market?
Right now, we are available in Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania. However, we have a strategy to expand to new countries and even new continents. And if we get an analysis of Ghana, then it shall be available to the Ghana market. And we are also thinking about the online community where we can be able now to, for example, capture people in Ghana who have access to internet and they can link with the people already on WeForm. So right now we are not available in Ghana, but we have an expansion strategy in place.
Yeah, so if there are colleagues from Ghana who want to be part of this, and they can probably get in touch with you. Patrick is asking, do you also offer market and trade advice for farmers producing tea or coffee for international markets?
Okay, so coffee and tea is a tricky one because it's an already established value chain. Originally, the farmers who created WeForm were in those two value chains, and they were talking about the tea and coffee and giving farmers access to information about, say, market prices, good agricultural practices for tea and coffee and all that. But right now, we don't offer market and trade advice for tea and coffee farmers, basically because it's an established value chain for both Kenya and Uganda. And the people involved in these value chains are our partners, and they communicate with their farmers within the system again for the vital information. And you find that most of these value chains have their outside meetings, for example, AGMs, which farmers will get this information. But I would say, other than tea and coffee, other agricultural farm produce, farmers are already talking about it. Hence, we've seen the need for us to have a marketplace for farmers, provide market info, but farmers within themselves, they'll say, I sold my tomatoes in Nairobi market for this price. So if you're interested, visit Nairobi market, or I sold my avocados at this price in another market. Yeah.
The next question is a topic that we have touched on already, but maybe it's good to revisit it and answer it in a different way. How does the WeForm handle misleading advice? How do you ensure that the advice or answers are specific to regions, given the complexities of agriculture? Do you have moderators who are technically sound?
Okay, so I can start with matching regions. So what happens when a farmer signs up, we will ask for some profile information, and part of the profile information includes understanding which region you're coming from or which locality your farm is located. So after we understand where your farm is, the questions that you ask will be sent to people within a certain radius near you for geographical reasons, and sometimes climate changes after a few kilometers or so. So we need people with the exact same climatic conditions responding to each other. However, we allow for cross-country exchange. So on average, one question will receive 3 to 5 responses because we've sent it to 10 people. So among the 10, I would say one would be in a county outside, another one would be in another country, and the highest percentage would be people within the same locality. Unless you're the only farmer in that locality, would we then seek for answers from people outside? Then about misleading advice, we are currently training our algorithm again to understand different agronomic, I would say, practices by training it with keywords again. So we try, for example, I can give a very simple example. Say a farmer asked about how to control fly in cattle, and we know the response is, for example, an environmental friendly response would be control the bushes around you and such. We will train our algorithm to understand that we have given this answer priority, that if a farmer asks about fly, give them this answer. But there will be other responses, which could be maybe other cultural practices that farmers have practiced and have worked and have been proven. We allow that. Then for extremely bad content, for example, if you know something is illegal in Kenya, we would not allow it to go through. Just give a very basic example. We all know that DDT is a banned chemical. So in a law, answer going to a farmer that spray your crop with DDT. So that's how we control misleading questions.
I have answers. A question that just came in relates to that from Leanne Romines. Is there control on sustainability of advice of private farmers? For example, when the use of harming pesticide is proposed or unsustainable irrigation methods. So it relates to the same kind of topic that we just had, potentially harmful advice.
Yes.
Yeah, I guess you mean you answered this already. It's not, I don't think it's ever going to be completely possible to avoid that kind of risk, but it looks like you're trying already quite a few mechanisms to minimize this, at least.
Yes.
Things can happen. But I think, to be honest, even if you work with a highly skilled professional as an advisor, it may still mean that you get wrong advice. Sometimes.
Yeah. Yes, and we do have a team of agronomists in the company, but dealing with 1 million farmers would be hectic for the team. So what the agronomist team is doing together with the data scientists is training the algorithm to better understand agricultural practices.
Another question. Do you provide practical support to farmers or just simply information support or data support?
Right now, it's purely information support until we venture out into other avenues like marketplace and practical support. It's purely information right now.
The question about the business model here, it would be good to hear a little bit more about the business model that WeForm uses, who funds the not-for-profit arm and what started first. Did you have to make profits first before venturing into social impact aspects? Which way did it start and how is it currently working?
So as we are at right now, we are venture capitalist funded, and they have invested into WeForm with the hopes of making profit, because we have a business model that we are currently piloting and testing and seeing whether it's going to work. Right now, purely funded by venture capitalists. However, we've been able to make some few coins with our insights reports that we give out to businesses who will say, I'm interested in seeing what farmers in Nairobi County are talking about. We can even be specific and say what tea farmers in Nairobi County are talking about, or what tea farmers in Uganda are talking about, because I'm a business who's dealing in tea, and I want to understand what my primary producer of tea is going through. So we do sell such insights to businesses, governments, local governments, and other institutes. So that's our current way of making money, plus the venture capital.
I actually believe that even a not-for-profit organization needs to have a sustainable business model of some sorts, because you want to have a longer lasting and broader impact, you need to be able to have a more permanent setup and not just sort of jump from project to project funding, which is not really allowing you to have enough continuity. So, but also doesn't allow you to actually learn and improve enough often. So having that long-term vision and an appropriate funding model for this, I think is very important. And we cannot just always rely on the usual public funding sources for this, be it government or a few foundations. Question from Marcel Barbier. WeForm is available just in English. Do you know if there is an initiative to launch it in other languages, What about plans for illiterate farmers to use this service via like voice instead of texting?
Okay, WeForm is available in different languages in different countries. In Kenya, we are available in English and Swahili, which are the two official national languages. And in Uganda, we are available in English plus 3 other local languages that are majorly used in the country. So we have Luganda, Runyankore, and Runyakitara available in Uganda. So we've already catered for people who can't use English in Uganda, and also in Tanzania we use Swahili, which is also their language of choice for the country. In terms of so whenever we go to a new country, we also consider the languages that the small. In terms of using voice services, as at now we are considering it, but it's not yet a priority because so far we haven't seen an interest in farmers saying I would rather use voice rather than SMS. The reason behind, sorry.
No, I think that's fair enough. You can't do everything.
Yeah, the reason behind is we've also been trying to keep tabs with our competitors, and we've seen people trying out voice services, and they've had their issues. So we haven't seen our farmers require us to use voice. So we stay with what our farmers require us.
We have a question from Cecilia Bender. How do you monitor adoption of recommended practices, and do practices spread at community level among neighboring farmers? To somebody who needs a tip.
Okay, we have a program that I mentioned is called Champion Farmer, and this is our own sort of trainer model where we encourage farmers within the system to help farmers near them by responding to questions that they themselves understand. So that has helped us, one, categorize our users and understand this farmer is best placed to respond to this. And we've seen champions who are champions for sustainability or recommended practices in different value chains. So we see that happening on the system, and we actually encourage it because we have a way of recognizing these champions, or we call them champion farmers in the system. You'd mention, for example, say so and so is the champion farmer from this region for this month. We celebrate him on the system, and we'll give him say a care package of different goodies, or maybe even a mega prize. We do all these competitions in bid to have farmers telling each other about recommended practices, good agricultural practices, and all that. In terms of monitoring, again, we are able to see the content that's being talked about on the system, and we can see, for example, when it comes to, say, soil water control, we can see 60% of our farmers know about mulching, or 50% of our farmers know about irrigation. Just recently, we've had an research institute being interested with understanding how many farmers in WeForm talk about push-pull technology for the control of striga weed in Western Kenya, and now it's being used for the control of fall armyworm. We are also studying on good practices for the fall armyworm last year in Kenya. So we were able to see what farmers were talking about, and it was very interesting because they were giving
that's very
research on. Yeah.
Very interesting to hear, because a lot of the science behind the push-pull system for pest control in maize systems in Africa was actually done in collaboration between African institutions and scientists. And my institute here at Rosumstedt, I'm very pleased to hear that that you get questions about it. We have a question from Marian. have there ever been situations where questions could not be answered by a text message? I mean, where visual impact, for example, a photo or a video or a call or a visit to the field of the problem or the area was needed?
I would say yes, and mostly in livestock related questions. For example, a person might be having a very vital the health of their dairy cow, and these animals are costly and also maintenance is tricky. So giving such a person a generic response won't really help. So we've seen farmers telling other fellow farmers, for this situation, please go look for a vet to come and check your cow. And they've even gone further and recommended who to go to if you're within a certain locality. So with
A question
patients
from
for
Nick. Oh, sorry. Are you finished? Yeah.
yes.
The question from Nikesha Davis Shanks. Are you noticing any trends relating to young people becoming, getting more involved in farming? Can you see any of that kind of trend in your network?
Yes, actually, we have an interesting demographic. Most of the people who joined WeForm are between, if I remember correctly, 25 to 38 years old. That's the largest population within WeForm. And most of them we notice because after signing up, we sign up or awareness campaigns on radios and other mass communication channels. We noticed that almost 60% of them would sign up and immediately start. I want to start farming this. I want to start farming tomatoes. How do I go about it? And we discovered that these farmers are very, very new when it comes to that value chain. And we had to look for a way to cater for these farmers using, again, our Champion Farmer program, where we pitched experienced farmers we matched them with these new farmers, where we would have a way of these experienced farmers request questions from these young farmers, and the young farmers would be sorted out.
How does WeForm work in collaboration with the Kenyan government, building trust and improving abilities of people to work with their governments? How do you interact with the government?
Okay, number one, when we launch in different counties in Kenya, our first institute to approach is the county government, mostly because agriculture in Kenya now is a devolved, function of the county governments. So whenever we approach or we want to launch in county, for example, Bungoma, we'll go talk to the county government, Ministry of Agriculture, would get their buy-in and have their extension system as our original champions. So the extension system would be the ones to initially introduce us to the farmers. They'll tell us we have these farmer groups in these different localities, go and talk to them. And we'd actually even go with them, organize farmer field days in collaboration with governments. So that's how we work with governments in Kenya.
Great. There's a last question here that is related to this from Tang Eras. How do WeForm link farmers to public subventions? I'm not sure what he means, subsidies maybe, or public interventions at the national level. Do you operate as a cooperative?
No, we don't operate as a cooperative. We operate as a way of giving farmers access to vital information. We sort of provide a platform that can socialize with each other to get farming information on a real-time basis. Say, for example, today I've woken up and I've found that my cow has this problem. For example, it has refused to wake up or stand. What do I do? I would immediately go to my SMS and text for free and ask. Then I would get a response, which would be either talk to a vet, get a vet, or do this and this. It's as a cooperative, And we try to encourage farmers to talk within their geographic regions, and we even limit a high percentage of people receiving corresponding questions and answers to people within the same locality.
Well, thank you very much, Njoki. Our time is up. This hour went by very fast. And thank you, everybody, for submitting really, really interesting questions. We could have probably gone on for quite a bit longer. But I think it's very inspiring work that you do. I'm sure there are many other very concrete initiatives of this kind all over the world. So those of you who participate in the course, share those with us and have more discussion on it, or provide us with information links to it. If there are more questions, I think we can also collect those and send them over to Njoki to maybe answer. But thank you very much for joining us today, and thank you and good luck to WeForm as an organization to reach even more, many more millions of farmers, not just in Africa or anywhere in the world. Have a good day, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.